Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was probably one of the most influential video games of its era. We are not just talking graphically here, with its multi-layered background simulating 3D space and its roster of colourful characters, but because, near single-handedly, it pioneered the genre of mascot racing games. Mario Kart is a good time, and it got the attention of a wide audience, particularly among families, and showcased the joys of playing a standard racing game with friends from the comfort of one's home. Why am I bringing this up? He ain't Sonic, and this isn't a Super Mario retrospective. That's what peeps like Ant Dude does. Godspeed, good sir. It's strangely hard not to go into this duology, this whole territory really, without bringing up the video game that inspired the genre in the first place. There were mascot races that preceded it, but they didn't hit the global market quite as well as the Plumber did. But why would Sonic, owner of the fastest legs in the world, even need a car to begin with? With others, it's understandable. Take Mario, for instance. He has the capacity to sprint, but his corporate rival doesn't even require an automobile to go fast, and he can run at Mach speed. Was it to give the other competitors a sporting chance? Does he just want to show off? Well, we know the reason in the Japanese manual of Sonic Drift. Them's the rules of the race. Sonic Drift was a video game for the Sega Game Gear, meant to capitalise on the Mario Kart craze, and despite how inspired it may have been during its conception, the final product is relatively simple. It has very little going for it, showcasing maps with not much depth, and has the character roster with less choices than how many blunts I've smoked in my life. Considering what little substance I have to work with, this retrospective will change a little for it. Instead of organising the different categories of each game, I will instead talk about them as a whole, one after the other. Consider it lap 1, lap 2, and the last one. So start your engines, cause here we go. Just to get into the mindset at the time, this game wasn't actually the first instance of seeing Sonic driving a car. The idea of Sonic Drift didn't pop in fully formed from the ether. We had illustrations of the blue lad driving automobiles since the Sega Sonic the Hedgehog 1993 calendar, and even earlier in Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car if you want to get technical, and if you don't mind the idea of the free as the wind hedgehog playing the role of a police patrolman. I have loved seeing these cute illustrations since I was a kid, because the games would always bring them back as unlockables. Interesting to learn that they trace back to the 90s calendars. I wish I knew who drew them. There's clearly a lot of love put into the colours and shading, and the touched up ones on the Sonic screensaver don't disappoint. Even the 1992 ones have their moments. Oh dang, is that Vector? Oh right, the Sonic the Hedgehog band members. How could I forget these forgotten guys? 'Twas nice to see a callback to them in a pre-reboot Archie Sonic comic, and in an episode of Tales Tube though. It's always intriguing seeing references to unused Sonic concepts and designs, be it homages or unlockable character skins. Anyway, back on the racing game. Developed by Sega without Sonic Team's involvement, and released exclusively in Japan on the 18th of March 1994, when they started production is not clear, though if I had to guess, it was shortly following the first or second game, judging by the locations and races. Though through beta screenshots, they had Amy Rose's slot reserved for a Flicky as a racer. I can't imagine how that would work, but then again, the character roster wasn't very big at the time. You'd think they'd all drive the car? The general concept of Sonic Drift was very clearly modelled after Mario Kart. For one thing, the racing tracks were paved in horizontal stripes of alternating colours with different coloured edges, and the faster you drove, the quicker they sped by. It used the same graphic style as the NES, evident by the background scrolling and the way the floor textures simulates the third dimension. However, while the basic gameplay was competently imitated, with some added artwork too, the level of polish and the fun vibes were not. Yeah, let's start having a look at the game proper. But before we begin, to let me know if you like these videos thus far, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll give you a thumbs up back. Wait, there we go. Quick shout out to the box art. It may have been drawn by Yasushi Yamaguchi, at least in the line art, but I do like how the cast look here in the game's chibi style. Looks like Luigi wasn't the only sidekick to give the hero the side eye. But enough pondering on the outward design, let's stick the metaphorical thing into the metaphorical handheld. The intro screen is certainly ambitious for a Game Gear title. Sonic's friends noom by at breakneck speed before the Hedgehog himself hops into his race car. Super short with a catchy tune, it gets right to the point. I like the main menu too, being held by Sonic's astonishingly elongated limb. and the music is very bouncy. It's the menu compositions that are perhaps my favourites in the soundtrack, because you're not here for very long, and thus you don't hear the music tracks loop as much. Be free, Eggman! Oh golly, the causes are introduced like the Sonic 1 Zone titles, but with the italic circle replaced by a steering wheel. That's ingenious. Now the different modes. Chaos Grand Prix form the main bulk of the game, each of the 3 represented by a coloured Chaos Emerald and containing 6 different tracks to race through, with gradually rising difficulty levels for its maps. Races themselves play out how you would expect. Put simply, there's you and 3 other guys, all trying to stay on the asphalt and not the rugged ground that slows you down, and you can drive into items and deploy character-specific abilities to get the upper hand. In your vehicle, you can accelerate or brake, and can slide left and right, even at a standstill. Drifting is highly encouraged if you want to triumph over most of these maps. It requires you to hold the brake button while turning corners. Just don't do it for too long, or else you'll end up in a tailspin. Up there is a map of the course, so you know which ways to turn your vehicle. There are 3 laps per race, and you get points based on what place you're in. 3 points for first place, 2 for second, 1 for third, and 0 for last place. Oop. The winner at the end is the one with the most accumulated points, whilst the victor's sprite rides across the screen. Look at him go! Every Grand Prix ends with the top 3's faces emblemised on rising flags, the tallest one being in first place, and in the case of ties, the winner is the one who won the most in races. The game mode I occupied the most when I first played it was Free Run, where you can play any map and try to beat your own time without having to worry too much about losing to races. And I was weird like that. Versus mode is essentially a 2-player free run if you happen to have 2 peeps with Game Gears and 1 gear-to-gear cable. Man, those were the days. Before Wi-Fi, you had to plug in your handheld gaming console with a connecting cable if you wanted to play together. I remember doing that fairly often with Pokemon as a kid. It was the only way to complete the decks. And I prefer racing against other players, honestly, because good grief, the AI and your opponents are about as intelligent as sea monkeys. The game has a toggleable difficulty, but that does little to defer their driving skills. In my experiences, they don't use their character-specific abilities, and in both games they cannot use items, but in this game they had a nasty habit of just dashing right through you and make you lose momentum and or rings. Opponents can body block you, but it's surprisingly fickle when you attempt that maneuver yourself. Thankfully there are items littering the floor. They are not all visually appealing, you're not going to see any different looking objects as usable items, and they activate on contact. Simply being different coloured item boxes, getting any of them can be the key to making you insta-win. As long as you don't hit another item or a spring, because you can't have 2 at the same time, and touching one will end your power-up prematurely. High-speed monitors make you, as their name implies, momentarily dash you forward in a burst of speed. There are springs which, when touched, launch you into the air, useful for gaining speed as it follows turns for you. The invincibility monitor surrounds you in sparkles and it allows you to mow through racers and obstacles alike without losing momentum on the gravel. Want to beat the race easily? Just get this, all items on the track always spawn in set locations anyway. The music that plays is also You Can Do Anything from Sonic CD, which is an unexpected surprise. Lastly, rings are what racers use to activate their special move, needing 2 of them to initiate it, but you can lose one if you hit an obstacle, muck up a drift attempt, or if the RNG gods decide it's time to get f***y. On the subject of special moves, let's check out the playable characters, all 4, there's 4 of them. I suppose it can't compete with other racing games when it's on 8-bit hardware, huh? Let's check out the epic characters coming to South Island to race for the Chaos Emeralds. With 2 being playable for the first time in the series, they are as follows. Sonic, the fastest thing alive. Not wanting to abuse his naturally fast running speed, he drives the Cyclone. He's one of the speediest racers, though his turning leaves just a little to be desired, and his special move when using up 2 rings is to burst forward as if he got a speed monitor. Tails, driving in on the MTP1 Wheelwind, which he invented for this very race. His stats are nearly the opposite of Sonic's, with better handling and less overall speed, and his special move is to jump into the air over opponents, essentially the same as touching a spring. Eggman, his Japanese name because this was originally only released there. Playing fair for the first time in his mad scientist career while driving the Egg Typhoon. It's essentially an upgraded Sonic 2 Eggmobile, my headcanon. He drops spiked mines on the course or at other races as his special move, and boasts good speed but poor acceleration. And Amy, chasing her hero Sonic in her own car, Breeze. Is it sentient or just looks that way? You decide. Paralleling tales with Sonic, Miss Rose's stats are the opposite of Eggman's. Decent acceleration, but is altogether slower, which is evident just from every results screen when not playing as her. The maps themselves have 3 different variants, but are all based on zones from Sonic 1. They share the aesthetics of those levels and have original music tracks, but there isn't anything gameplay-wise that sets them apart from each other. There's no bottomless pits, no lava in Marble Zone, and no traumatizing water in Labyrinth Zone, though the latter is still super tricky. Buggering Christ! The music tracks for these maps are fine, composed by Masayuki Nagao, the Sonic Chaos guy. The music's decent for this system, I commend them for that, but they are sadly shorter than the time it takes to heat up my kettle, so they get a bit repetitive after a while. I do have a soft spot for the Green Hill one though. Still not sure why they didn't just remix the original iconic level themes though. Is it copyright? It's gotta be. Lastly, for completing each of the Chaos GPs in order, you get a little ending cutscene that varies between characters and also take on slightly different art styles. Beating the final race as Sonic is just him racing and giving a cool thumbs up. Tails' one has him stop to hop into the air like he were on a spring, giving the camera a thumbs up. Amy's is about her winning and ignoring the prize to try and cozy up to Sonic with a slightly more shoujo aesthetic. And Eggman's one just has the dude gloat loudly in a more chibi style. He bothers Sonic with his victory, only to be chased down the very same track as he runs for his life. Though he's outrun the Hedgehog before. How does he keep doing that? The game is also pretty easy. Despite the often erratic racetracks, you can clear each of the GPs in less than 10 minutes. I should know, my footage speaks for itself. The racer AI isn't very smart, and even if you turn up the difficulty, it only makes them drive faster. And that's it, no adjustments to the map or increasing the number of obstacles. This game is a very basic moment that ends soon after it begins. So little oomph in this game. I suppose they were testing the waters before fully committing, because 1 year later, they would deliver a much more improved experience. Time to talk about the better game now. Released in 1995, the more popular, polished, and, let's be honest, packed version of the concept was Sonic Drift 2, called Sonic Drift Racing in Europe. If you're gonna pick one 8-bit Sonic car game, please let it be this one. It's got issues, but it clearly has more meat on its bones. The cover art this time clearly emphasises this, as much as it struggles to keep all 7 characters in frame. Poor Fang's obscured by the border on the North American box art, but that's so natural for his character. It came out first in Japan on the 17th of March, with an April release in Europe and the UK, and then in November for North America. Already I'm enjoying the title screen with all the characters adorning it, and if you thought the previous menu having a long arm holding it was funky, how about a long Tails? Knuckles seems to find that funny. You also have the option to pick the other 3 characters you race with? Alright, time for a villain chill out. In terms of content, already there are vast improvements in the map variety and items, which by the way are now carryable after you collect them and can be activated whenever. Well, most of them, and they are not all located in the dead centre of the roadway this time. It's the same button as the special move one, and the items take priority. The playing experience is relatively unchanged, save for the addition of pits and other rare obstacles. There's just more to check out. I noticed some control changes, like how you can't slide along the ground when at a standstill like in the first game, and there's a 100% chance of spinning out when hitting the back of racers, which can lead to some real car crash moments. Look out! Quack. Rings, dash monitors, sparkly monitors, and springs return, but there's also yellow monitors that act as a spring you can trigger at any time, mine monitors, which are essentially Eggman's mine attack, accessible for everyone, flash stars if you feel like giving everyone a seizure. I tried adjusting the screen to make it less hard on your eyes, but meh. And reverse, a little ball that reverses your controls for a moment. Although their usage is still standard and found at fixed locations around the racecourses, I appreciate the variety of these compared to the first games, and the invincibility music is also a shorter rendition of the one from Sonic 3. The music is certainly improved overall, even if they also loop too many times. They were composed by Sahori Kobayashi and a returning Nagao, and together they produced a fair number of slight bangers. Not only are there racetracks harkening back to the previous entries of the Mega Drive games, in this case Sonic 2 and 3, there's a bunch that are wholly original to this game, including Desert Road, Iron Ruin, which I'm fairly certain are the ruins of Scrap Brain, and flashing lights warning here, but just putting that out there for you full screen peeps, Rainy Savannah! Ow! Oh, whoa, get a load of that guy. These courses now have variety in their layouts, and having pits on either side or both sides of the road, dark tunnels, walls that slow you down if you crash into them, or even big banks of sand on the outer edge that drive you up it. Additional variety is that nearly half of the maps in fact don't loop around, rather they have a distinctive beginning and end. Very much in the spirit of regular Sonic level design, except in cars of course, and having other races, which we'll get to them. The Chaos Grand Prix is still the main mode, where there are 3 different circuits that offer 6 maps, and you earn a Chaos Emerald for winning first place on each of them. Your victory is certified when you see a goalpost float down after you pass the finish line. Hey, it's Eggman!
I pissed on the moon, you idiot!
The winning racer still speeds by the results screen after the race is over, though they don't have unique sprites this time. A shame, really. The end screen of GPs has the top 3 racers on a winner's podium, and they have their own win or lose sprites, though like in the first game they are often just slight alterations of their Mega Drive ones. There's also no character-specific slideshows at the end, that's instead replaced by just a photograph of all the characters on it. Blue Chaos Grand Prix has the most organic progression, akin to a traditional Sonic game experience, and its original race courses start on Dark Caverns to Emerald Hill Zone having a party where all the items are replaced with colourful balloons that, like in Sonic Drift 1, they activate on contact. Oh, the balloons are not your friends. To Emerald Ocean, where touching the edges or slowing down your vehicle will make you sink. To reaching outer space in Milky Way, which is quite the sharp change, but it sure looks and sounds nice. And the game leads right up to the final race course, Death Egg, where you race along the surface of the thing. This one is particularly cool because its visual design reminds me of that of Sonic 2's concept art. The Genesis games never really gave justice to the battleship's exterior. Beating this also starts a little one-on-one showdown with either Eggman or Sonic in a final Grand Prix race. If playing as Sonic, Tails, Amy or Knuckles, your opponent is Eggman, and Sonic being your foe if playing as Eggman, Fang or Metal Sonic. And I love the music for it too, it's a simplified remix of the Sonic 3 Robotnik fights. What? He caught up? Oh yeah, let's talk about the racers. Let's go for a, present mic voice here. Joining the Chaos Grand Prix is famed recluse and Emerald Guardian Knuckles, or as the game calls him, Knuckles, riding in on his vehicle of choice, the Tempest. He is a jack of all trades and doesn't particularly falter or excel at anything. His special quirk when using up 2 rings is to punch any racers with his fists if they're close by, otherwise he'll just launch up into the air like a spring, much like his buddy Tails. Are they officially all buddies? Not yet they aren't. Fang the Sniper, who we technically haven't seen in his debut game yet. This sly weasel rides in on his personal hoverbike, the Marvelous Queen, which possesses high acceleration and speed, but will hesitate when reaching curves on the road. The oil balls he leaves on the floor will make you spin out of control. Oh, the horror. And Metal Sonic, Sonic's mechanical copycat, joins the race too, riding in on the Blue Devil. A racer with stats absolute, he is super fast, even faster than Sonic, but with the risk of really low handling. His special ability is to propel himself forward at breakneck speed, with even greater speed than Sonic's car, though he requires 3 rings to activate it. Play him at your own risk. Gosh, my voice. Also, I just noticed most of the vehicles' names are a play on different kinds of weather and windstorms. Like the original Sonic Drift, this game comes with a free run mode to race through any track you like, a multiplayer mode where 2 peeps can race each other, and the options menu not only has the difficulty adjustment, but also the option to toggle between having obstacles on the race courses or not. Very handy, although I don't know why it's called Enemy though. There's really only one of those in this game, and also the other races during Grand Prix. Alright, let's go into the big downside to this game, the antagonistic racers and alterations to the enemy CPU. So the first game's AI weren't very complex, they could race competently, but could easily be outraced for quite a fair distance. By comparison, Sonic 2's computer players are out for blood. They'll drive into you and effortlessly follow the tracks, have instant access to their special moves and use them very frequently. And the rubber banding truly shows when you're ahead of them in a race. You could swerve the corners and use special moves with peak efficiency, save up those speed up monitors and accelerate at the perfect time, and the computer player in second place will still find a way to catch up and overtake you, without fail. The only way to alleviate this is to have an item or special move on standby, or try and body block them on the section of the track they happen to come in on. It's partially what makes the final battle so hard, especially against Sonic because he can just gain increased momentum whenever he bloody well wishes it. But if you can get past this glaring hurdle, then, well, you have nerves of steel. Unsurprising to anyone, the Sonic Drift duology weren't praised all that much back in the day, although the second one was deemed mid. While conveniently on a portable device, its interface being squished to fit on the tiny Game Gear screen didn't do it any favours. Despite the mixed to negative response from critics, both games have been re-released with others on the system as unlockable bonuses. Both games were first replayable in Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut after collecting 40 and all 130 emblems, and completing 40 and 19 missions respectively. And they were a part of the online streaming service GameTap, which discontinued in 2009 and pretty much left everyone's consciousness the moment it did. There's also Sonic Mega Collection Plus for Sonic Drift, and Sonic Gems Collection, the Tech Toy Systems and Plug and Play, and the Nintendo 3DS's Virtual Console in Europe regions were where Sonic Drift 2 was ported. And lastly, Sonic Origins Plus for the pair of them, which thankfully came with a save state feature in case you screw up a race. ROM hacks of Sonic 2 are very few in number, but the legacy of these dinky racing games aren't entirely discounted. One fan work is currently in development, Sonic Drift 16-bit, made in part by the guys who made Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit. It was shown off at Sage 2023, and it seems like a better looking, better sounding version of Sonic Drift 2 in terms of aesthetics and characters, and you can pick the difficulty of CPU players before entering a race. And my word, the emulated Mega Drive style is a vibe, as long as you don't mind objects resizing at abnormal scales, but that just comes with the territory. I love the addition of boost ramps, a clearer drift mechanic, all 7 races on the road at once, and while I miss characters having their own special moves, as I'd say that admittedly oftentimes broken feature helped Sonic Drift stand out, I will begrudgingly accept rows of randomized boxes with distinct, intelligibly marked items. Really makes it a closer equivalent to Super Mario Kart. Was that the Barrel of Doom? Sonic Drift, and predominantly Sonic Drift 2, is an alright time. You could certainly find better racing games before and after its release, the duology being remembered less for its gameplay and more for introducing the discussion of why Sonic has to be confined to a car. The second game is clearly the better one, and I can see the appeal it would have to fans, especially on a handheld system you could take with you on car rides and the like. Plus you could play as Amy and Eggman, and Metal Sonic, something practically unheard of back then, and it's one of the main appeals of side games of this particular genre. But for me, and my conclusion matches my first experience with these games in compilations, my enjoyment is strictly on the free run modes without the stress of unfair computer player difficulty. If I wanted to give advice to anyone wanting to check these two games out, just absorb the Sonic Drift duology experience, their unique at the time character roster and music tracks for as long as you want to, before moving on to other stuff. In the grander Sonic franchise, there are an absolute myriad of racing games that would be developed as the years went on, each of varying degrees of success with so many different vibes. But if you crave for a simpler time, or something to take you back to the 90s, it's here if that is what you would enjoy playing. No judgment, but I think even Sonic R was more memorable. On the tier list, I would be inclined to rate them separately, so I'd say Sonic Drift deserves an E rank, and Sonic Drift 2 a D. They are not quite high enough for me to recommend to Sonic fans, unless you don't mind savouring vintage racing games before they became more mainstream. You do you. And bless, thank you for checking out this video on the first Sonic game of which he drove a car. As always, I'd love to hear your experiences of the Sonic Drift games, what you think of them and their 8-bitness, and hopefully I can provide more fun vids like this in future. For the next video, it seems Sonic Triple Trouble for the Game Gear is next. It's the one known for introducing beloved boy failure Fang to the series, and while it is superb on its own, I'm feeling keen on giving the fan remake by Noah N. Copeland a look. Consider it a double feature, I suppose. Thank you ever so much for watching, if indeed you still are, and I will see you in the next video.
Genocide!